Laudetur Jesus Christus. Vatican and World News.
In the headlines this Sunday, March 28th, Pope Francis highlights a sense of interior amazement that marks Palm Sunday and remains with us throughout Holy Week. The Pope also prays for all victims of violence in light of an attack on a church in Indonesia, and police in Belarus detain over 100 people taking part in anti-government protests. In the Vatican, I'm Francesca Merlo. For the second year in a row, Pope Francis led the celebration of Palm Sunday inside St. Peter's Basilica with a limited congregation participating due to the coronavirus pandemic. At the same time, millions joined the celebration with the customary global television and radio broadcasts and live streaming. Thaddeus Jones reports.
Presiding over the Liturgy of Palm Sunday of the Lord's Passion, Pope Francis underscored the sense of interior amazement that marks this celebration and remains with us throughout Holy Week.
Ogni anno questa liturgia suscita in noi un atteggiamento di stupore.
In his homily for the occasion, the Holy Father focused his thoughts around the sense of amazement evoked in today's liturgy and all of Holy Week, since we go from the joy of welcoming Jesus as he enters Jerusalem to the sorrow of seeing him condemned to death and crucified. We hear of the crowds shouting, "Hosanna," and a few days later crying out, "Crucify him." The Pope said this contrast reflected a reality where people admired Jesus, but did not let themselves be amazed by him.
Ammiravano Gesù, ma non erano pronti a lasciarsi stupire da lui.
He said both terms are fundamentally different. Admiration can be worldly, since it follows its own likes and expectations, whereas amazement remains open to the wonder of others and the newness they bring, allowing our attitudes and lives to change as a result. We have to go beyond admiring Jesus, the Pope said, and follow in his footsteps to let ourselves be challenged by him to pass from admiration to amazement.
E che cosa maggiormente stupisce del Signore e della sua Pasqua?
The Lord and his Passover amazes us as he achieves glory through humiliation, the Pope observed. He triumphs by accepting suffering and death, things that we in our quest for admiration and success would rather avoid. And Jesus did this for us, going to the depths of human experience, existence, and weakness, to draw near to us and not abandon us in our suffering and our death, the Pope said, to redeem us, to save us. In this way, the Lord redeemed and transformed our deepest struggles and conflicts, he noted. God triumphs, but the palm of victory passes through the wood of the cross.
Lasciamoci stupire da Gesù per tornare a vivere.
Let us be amazed by Jesus so that we can start living again, the Pope underscored, and realize that we are loved by Jesus upon whom we gaze on the cross. The grace of amazement helps us also realize that in welcoming the dismissed and discarded who surround us, those ill-treated in life, we are loving Jesus, the Pope said, for this is where he is, in the least of our brothers and sisters, in the rejected and discarded.
In a brief meditation for the Angelus following the Palm Sunday Mass, Pope Francis reflected on God's action during the pandemic and on our response. Christopher Wells tells us more.
Siamo entrati nella Settimana Santa.
We have begun Holy Week.
Per la seconda volta la viviamo nel contesto della pandemia.
For the second time, we will live it within the context of the pandemic, said Pope Francis in remarks ahead of Sunday's Angelus. Last year, he said, we were mostly shocked. This year, we are more sorely tried, and the economic crisis has grown severe. In the grave situation we are facing, what is God doing? The Pope asked. He responded, Jesus takes up the cross.
Gesù prende la croce, cioè si fa carico del male che tale realtà comporta.
The Pope explained that Jesus takes upon himself not only the physical and psychological evils that accompany the pandemic, but above all, spiritual evil. Because, he said, the evil one takes advantage of crises in order to sow distrust, despair, and strife.
E noi che cosa dobbiamo fare?
How then are we to respond, the Pope continued. His answer? The Virgin Mary, the Mother of God, who is also his first disciple, shows us the way. She followed her Son.
Ha preso su di sé la propria parte di sofferenza.
Mary, said Pope Francis, took upon herself her own share of suffering, darkness, and bewilderment, and walked the path of the Passion, keeping the lamp of faith burning in her heart. Pope Francis said, with God's grace, we too can make this journey. And he encouraged us, in our own daily way of the cross, not to pass by our brothers and sisters in difficulty, but to allow our hearts to be moved by compassion and to draw near to them. Like Simon the Cyrene, who was forced by the Romans to help Jesus carry his cross, we too might ask, why me, the Pope said. It is precisely in that moment, he added, that we will discover the gift that without our own merit we have been given.
Ma poi scopriremo il dono che senza nostro merito ci è toccato.
May Our Lady help us, Pope Francis said in conclusion, for she always goes before us on the path of faith. I'm Christopher Wells.
Before the recitation of the Marian prayer, Pope Francis prayed for all the victims of violence. He made special note of Indonesia, saying he was praying especially for those of this morning's attack in Indonesia in front of the Cathedral of Makassar. The cathedral was rocked by a suicide bombing on Sunday morning, which early reports say wounded many people, including church workers and worshippers. Efforts are underway to free a vast container ship which has blocked the Suez Canal for 6 days, crippling international trade. Nathan Morley reports.
The huge Panama-flagged Ever Given ran aground last Tuesday in the canal after losing the ability to steer amid high winds and a sandstorm. Since then, the canal has been closed to traffic, meaning that billions of dollars of cargo are now stalled at either end of the waterway, and with each passing day, there are huge losses for both Egypt and international trading companies. Some 12% of the world trade volume passes through the Suez Canal, which connects the Mediterranean Sea with the Red Sea. It's a major artery for maritime trade, since it allows ships to travel between Europe and South Asia without navigating around Africa, thereby reducing the sea voyage by a distance of up to 6,000 kilometers. Joe Reynolds is a chief engineer in the U.S. Merchant Marine. He's currently on one of the 300 ships which are waiting to go through the Suez Canal.
It's a waiting game, and we're just waiting. Me personally, I get up about 6 a.m. and I get on the computer and I try to do some paperwork here up in the office. And then at 8 a.m. we have our morning meeting down in the engine room, and we get the guys working on all kinds of projects that we have. We continue to work throughout the day. Today I was helping the electrician on a problem with a light on the mast. You know, we have lunch and dinner. We might work a little bit more after dinner, and then we go back to our rooms, maybe watch a TV show and go to bed and start the whole day over again the next day, hoping that the situation changes. But so far, every morning I wake up, I go up to the bridge and I ask the mate on watch, has anything changed with the Ever Given? And every day so far, she said, nope, no change. We've been doubly quarantined on the ship. We haven't had any shore leave due to COVID. I've been on the ship over 90 days. There's guys who've been on almost a year who haven't been able to go ashore because of COVID.
The crisis has now forced many companies to reconsider rerouting vessels around Africa's Cape of Good Hope. It's a longer and more expensive way to travel between Asia and Europe. Regarding a salvage operation which is underway, it's understood that 2 tugboats are on the way to the waterway to help with that operation, whilst experts hope a high tide will dislodge the vessel. The Italian-flagged Carlo Magno and a Dutch flagship called the Alp Guard are in the Red Sea en route to the Suez Canal. For Vatican Radio, this is Nathan Morley reporting.
Across Myanmar, opponents of the ruling junta on Sunday mourned the killings of at least 114 people by security forces in the bloodiest day since a military coup on February 1st, but vowed to keep protesting to end army rule. Children were among those killed on Saturday, Myanmar's Armed Forces Day, in a crackdown that drew renewed criticism from Western countries and was denounced by the US envoy as horrifying. Britain is confident second doses of COVID-19 vaccines will be administered on time without mixing jabs, Culture Minister Oliver Dowden said on Sunday amid concerns over a slowdown in supplies. The government warned earlier this month that its vaccination programme would slow down in April due in part to a delay of a shipment from India's Serum Institute. And finally, security forces in Belarus have launched a new crackdown on people protesting against the country's longtime president, Alexander Lukashenko, who has refused to step down after a disputed election. As Stefan Boss reports, scores of people were detained during a protest over the weekend.
Police in Belarus's capital detained more than 100 people who assembled for a protest march Saturday. The demonstrators in Minsk demanded President Alexander Lukashenko's resignation, who ruled this nation for 26 years. Protests began in August after a disputed election that gave President Lukashenko a sixth term in office. Presidential candidate Svetlana Tsikhanovskaya was forced into exile after she claimed to have won the ballot. Heard through an interpreter, she said supporters of the political opposition seek to revive the wave of mass protests that gripped Belarus for months last year.
Belarus has woken up. Hundreds of thousands of people are taking to the streets of towns and villages to say, "Go away." Thousands of workers have called for strikes to say, "Enough. Enough of the lies, enough of intimidating people, enough of lawlessness and violence. Political prisoners should be released, and the elections should be conducted again in a free, honest, and transparent way."
It isn't easy. During the first sizable anti-government protests of 2021, more than 200 people were detained Thursday. 5 journalists were reportedly among those arrested. 4 were later released, but it was not clear if the 5th, the editor of the popular newspaper Nasha Niwa, faced charges. Some journalists arrested while covering last year's protests were sentenced to 2 years in prison. Catholic Church leaders are among those expressing concern about the situation in the country. It remains unclear whether supporters will be able to revive the massive post-election protests, the largest and most persistent show of opposition the former Soviet Republic has seen. Some rallies attracted as many as 200,000 people. But with more than 33,000 people arrested and many beaten by police, the opposition faces an uphill battle to make its case for change. For Vatican Radio, I am Stefan Bos, reporting.
And that brings us to the end of this edition of Vatican and World News. For more on these and other stories, and to hear this broadcast as a podcast, please be sure to visit our web portal at www.vaticannews.va. You can also catch the latest updates on our Facebook page or on Twitter. Many thanks go to Gustavo Messina in studio. In the Vatican, I'm Francesca Merlo.